สวัสดีครับขอต้อนรับท่านผู้ชมทุกท่านเข้าสู่รายการเสียงไทยเพื่อเสรีภาพของคนไทยนะครับในขณะนี้นั้นอาการพระประชวรของพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวก็ยังไม่เป็นที่แน่ชัดในการรับรู้ของประชาชนคนไทยสักเท่าไหร่นะครับหรือแม้แต่ในหมู่ชาวโลกที่ติดตามความเคลื่อนไหวและความเป็นไปของสังคมไทยด้วยนะครับแม้จะมีแถลงการจากสำนักพระราชวังออกมาเป็นครั้งคราวแต่ก็ไม่สามารถที่จะทำให้ประชาชนที่เฝ้าติดตามพระอาการอย่างใจจดใจจ่อนั้นเข้าใจได้ถึงพระอาการที่แท้จริงของพระบาทสมเด็จพระเจ้าอยู่หัวนะฮะและเมื่อ2 อาทิตย์ที่ผ่านมานะครับก็มีการเผยแพร่ข่าวของสำนักข่าวต่างประเทศแห่งหนึ่งที่มีการระบุถึงอาการของสมเด็จพระบาทสมเด็จเจ้าอยู่หัวนะครับและระบุถึงว่าพระบาทสมเด็จเจ้าอยู่หัวกษัตริย์ของปวงชนชาวไทยนั้นได้สวรรคตแล้วนะครับแต่เมื่อมีการตรวจสอบข่าวนี้ก็กลับไม่ปรากฏที่มาอย่างชัดเจนสักเท่าไหร่นะครับก็เลยทำให้กระแสข่าวนี้ก็เป็นที่พูดถึงแล้วก็มีการล่ำลือกันอยู่ตลอดเวลาในสังคมไทยนะครับนอกจากนั้นกระแสข่าวเรื่องของการเปลี่ยนแปลงโยกย้ายบุคคลสำคัญในสำนักพระราชวังรวมไปถึงการถึงแก่อสัญญกรรมของนายแก้วขวัญวัชโรไทยเลขาธิการสำนักพระราชวังก็ถูกวิเคราะห์ตีความกันไปต่างๆนานาด้วยเช่นกันนะครับซึ่งแน่นอนเรื่องทั้งหมดนี้ย่อมจะเกี่ยวข้องกับเรื่องของการเปลี่ยนผ่านราชการและการสถาปนาพระมหากษัตริย์พระองค์ใหม่แห่งราชวงศ์จักรีไทยแน่นอนนะครับเราจะพูดคุยเรื่องนี้กันอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะครับกับสื่อมวลชนต่างชาติซึ่งจะเรียกว่าเป็นสื่อมวลชนต่างชาติเพียงคนเดียวที่ติดตามและเกาะติดเรื่องนี้อย่างต่อเนื่องมาโดยตลอดแล้วก็ได้ส่งผลกระทบต่อครอบครัวเขาด้วยเช่นกันอย่างที่เราทราบนะครับจะพูดคุยกับคุณแอนดรูว์แมคโกรโกมาเชลนะครับสื่อมวลชนชาวอังกฤษและเป็นอดีตนักข่าวรอยเตอร์ประจำประเทศไทย Hi Andrew, thank you so much for being with me again. From your source, how about Bhumipol Health right now?
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you so much about my family. I can't say too much about that, but it's not as bad as you might think. So thanks for everybody's support, but we're going to try and fix that. As for Bhumipoli's health, the first thing I want to say, which is that I don't really know much more than most Thai people about what's happened. And, you know, I'm trying to take little scraps of information that I get from some senior people, but a lot of it is gossip. And so the first point is, I don't really know. Nobody knows. But I think it's a real shame that the people of Thailand have to try to find out information this way from bits of gossip because nobody in power tells me the truth. So, you know, we have to just, you know, have gossip and rumor and we try to figure out what's happening. That's not the way that a country should be run in the modern era. You know, people should be open and honest. And it's a real pity that in Thailand, we don't know what's happening. So, as far as I know, from many good sources, King Bhumipol is a vegetable. His mind is gone. He's alive. You know, there's been these long rumors that he's dead, but he kept alive. There's kind of almost some truth to that, because as far as I can tell from all my sources, he's not conscious. He certainly can't sign any document, and that's a very important point, because some quite important documents have been signed recently, right? And, you know, it can't have been signed by Bhumipol personally because he's not able. So as far as I know, he's alive. His kidneys have failed. His lungs are full of fluid. His body's full of fluid. He's being kept alive by very expensive machinery. And frankly, it's a real shame. You know, whatever any of us think about Bhumipol, this is a sad way for anybody to live or die, to be kept alive in this horrible state because they're terrified to let him die. But I think the key point for our discussion is that it seems widely known by the key sources that he's not conscious. So decisions are being made about the palace and his signature is on them, but he didn't make the decision. So this is a very interesting point.
Right, but from I think about 2 weeks or 1 week ago, you had been post on your Facebook about the, the news from some media in Europe that talk about the King Bhumibol had been, I mean King Bhumibol died. What happened about this news?
Sure. Well, look, we shouldn't read too much into this because I don't believe the website was Euronews.
Yes, right.
Now, all good journalists around the world, for any organization, you have a list of important people who are going to die soon, and you prepare an obituary for them. Because it doesn't matter if you're Reuters or AFP or the New York Times or the LA Times, if you're a smart editorial organization, you think we have to get our obituary ready for a certain person. Now, I know personally that every media around the world has been preparing an obituary for King Bhumibol because we all think he's going to die very soon. We don't know exactly when. It might be tomorrow, it might have been yesterday, it might be in 1 year, but everybody's getting the obituary ready. I know this because I've actually written, some media have asked me to write the obituary, so I've already done it, and it'll be published when he dies. And other big media have interviewed me for video package when he dies. So all the international media is getting ready for when King Bhumibol dies. Now, one of the dangers of when you do this in any news organization is that if you make an accident and you press the wrong button, you could accidentally transmit the obituary early. So that's happened in all kinds of places over the world. People have accidentally sent an obituary early. And as far as I know, that's what happened with Euronews. So they prepared a story for when King Bhumibol died, and somebody, I feel quite sorry for whoever made the mistake. Somebody in the newsroom didn't understand exactly what was happening, and they put it out online. And then Euronews quickly, took it back. So that was a mistake. They don't have any inside information about Bhumibol that we don't know, but they're just trying to get ready for his death, which could be announced any time. And they accidentally, sent the story too soon. But it's quite interesting because it gave us an insight into how the international media is going to cover the death of King Bhumibol. So even though it was an unfortunate mistake for them, it was pretty interesting. But yeah, I mean, there's all these rumors every day now that it's going to happen today or tomorrow. And it may be, but the Euronews, the leak, it wasn't a leak. It was a mistake because they just sent it early.
But in every media around the world, they have their own sources in the Paris, right?
No, I mean, no one knows what's going on in the palace. Even me. I mean, I think my sources were quite good. Okay. Most media don't really have any good sources, and for many years in Thailand, when foreign correspondents in Thailand talked about palace sources, they had one contact, that was Anant Panyarachun.
I see.
And Anand made a point of kind of making good relations with the Foreign Correspondents Club of Thailand. So most of the time when you read in any foreign media report they're quizzing palace sources, it means they phoned Anand Panyarachun and asked him. And he doesn't even know what's going on anymore. So, this is our problem, that we don't know what's going on inside the palace because it's a totally opaque institution. They don't tell us what's happening, and everybody relies on gossip and rumor. So journalists like me rely on it. Every major media relies on it, just as ordinary Thais. We are all hearing this gossip and rumor. So it's such a shame because this is such an important thing for Thailand, and nobody's being given proper information. As we know, the health bulletins from the palace, you can't trust them. They're nonsense. It's all lies, and it's a pity that people in Thailand can't be told the truth about the health of their king.
But this issue, it's about the threat for national security in country. That is the Thai government, even Thai people believe that. So
yeah, that's what they say, but speaking as a professional journalist and also as somebody who's worked in, PR and information, if you want to keep national security secure and behave responsibly, the best thing you can do is be honest. And if people trust that they will learn the truth from the government, they won't gossip and they won't speculate. But unfortunately, we know that we can't ever have the truth from the Thai government, from the junta, or from the palace. And so people will speculate. And sure, that's bad for national security. It'd be better if people didn't speculate and these rumors didn't cause problems and we just heard the truth from a reliable source. But unfortunately, that's not the way the Thai elite wants to do it. They want to keep it secret. And so rumor and speculation will obviously proliferate.
Right. But it's the most interesting and very important for Thai people. It's about the big question that who are holding the Bhumipol signature to sign or to issue very important, paper or something and announce to the people. So what do you think of who are holding Bhumipol signature right now?
Well, from what I can tell from my research, and again, this is partly based on rumor and it's from sources that I can't reveal. So, I wish I could tell more about it, but and if you want to write about Thailand, you can't. But from what I know from very good sources, Thailand is now in control of two men specifically. It's Prayut Chan-o-cha, the junta leader, and Crown Prince Vajiralongkorn. Now, according to my sources, Prayut Wongsawan, who was the leader, he was really the leader, as you know, of the junta, even though Prayut was the face of the junta. Prayut was the Jiaopo. He was in charge. But he's now been pushed aside. And so as far as I know, from all my best sources, it's Prayut and it's the Crown Prince. And there's been some really interesting developments. I mean, one of them you mentioned at the start when you talked about the Wajardai family, right? I mean, not only has the Grand Chamberlain died, but some of his sons and his nephew, Distorn, who was such a close friend of the prince, he's been humiliated. We're seeing the prince start to humiliate some of the old members of the palace who opposed him. And this is one of the ways we know that the king is no longer able to do anything. He's a vegetable, because we can be sure that if King Bhumipol had any consciousness at all, he wouldn't allow these things to happen. But he can't stop it. So we're seeing many of the Wajardai family being humiliated. We've also seen a really important development, which is that Chirayu, the head of the Crown Property Bureau, which manages the massive royal wealth of more than $50 billion, he's been transferred to the position of Lord Chamberlain to replace Kiao Kwan Wajardai, who just died. Yes. Now, the reason that's significant is that he's basically being moved to a position that's, it's got a grand title, but it doesn't really mean anything. And that means that the Crown Prince and Prayut can now appoint a new head of the Crown Property Bureau. And that means they can control the money. And as I've been arguing for a long time now, a lot of this is about money. It's because the elite want to control the Crown Property Bureau fortune. There's a lot of money at stake here. And one of the reasons why the succession battle is happening is like in any big company, when you have the founder of the company is about to die and all the other people are fighting for control, it's about money. So this is really significant. That was huge news, really big news. If we look at the latest announcement as well, which is in the Royal Gazette, also notice that Chumpon Manmai was made head of palace security. And now he's somebody who should be familiar from 2009 when there was a battle between Suthep and Abhisit in the Democrat Party, and between the prince and the queen, and between different factions of the royalists about who should be the new police chief. Chumpon Manmai is somebody who's been the prince's man for many years in the police. And prince has now just appointed him to a senior position to the palace. So this is another sign that we can see that the prince really is in control. It's the same that it's becoming more obvious to people that watch royal news that Sutida Vajiralongkorn, the prince's wife, she's slowly being introduced as the wife. And if Bhumibol was still able to, influence things, we can be pretty sure he wouldn't accept this, because we know his views about his son's behavior. So all of these signs are showing us that the crown prince is running the palace, and people that try to oppose him, like the Wachartai family, they're getting crushed, and Prayut is going along with it. So we're seeing Prayut and the crown prince really are the people controlling Thailand right now, which is a kind of scary combination.
Right. What about the princess? She
Sure.
agree with that, or what do you think?
Well, I mean, one thing to make clear, I've talked about a succession struggle, and I think there's been a succession struggle for many years, but I don't think Pratap was ever actively involved in it. I don't personally, she was really fighting for something. I think she was always been more concerned about her own safety, and I don't think she really wants power in that sense. So I think people around her were trying to manipulate her and make her an alternative to the prince. I don't think she ever wanted to be part of it. And my sense is that, she's, I think she really, from everything I know about her, and I do have some sources in her palace, I really think she just wants to have quite a quiet life. She can watch some soap operas, eat a lot of Dunkin' Donuts, and, I don't think she wants to challenge her brother. I think she's frightened. But from what I'm hearing, and again, I thought that the succession struggle was over, because as you know, it's been my big theory for a long time that, a lot of what's happening is about succession. And when I published my book, it was all about this subject. And I kind of concluded that maybe I was wrong about the past couple of years, because I thought that actually the last few years it's been clear that it's the prince. There's no more struggle. But from what I'm hearing now, which is very interesting, the struggle is not over. I'm hearing that a lot of people in the Democrat Party and amongst the Wachartai family are actually trying to still find an alternative to the prince. And they're looking at various options. And this is one of the reasons why we saw some of the recent events. So this is really interesting, and I'm actually surprised myself, because I thought it was wrong that succession struggle was still going on. Now my sources are telling me the succession struggle is not over. And so, we're going to, there's still a large element of the Thai business elite and palace elite who won't accept the prince and are still trying to fight.
And the big figure person that involved in this issue is about the General Prem Tinasulannon. What about his role in this in this problem?
Well, this is really interesting. Prem has always hated the crown prince and always been his enemy. And in my analysis, we look at the coup of 2006. That was Prem's coup, and he did it to try and stop the prince. But the coup was a disaster, as we know. And since 2006, Prem has become less and less important. And Prayut Wongsawan really came to replace Prem as the kind of Jiao Pa of the palace royalist faction in the military. So I kind of thought that Prem was finished, and I think many people thought so. But recent events have proven us wrong. The new army chief, who was just sworn in today, is Prem's man. And according to sources, Prayut and Prem and the prince are trying to make some kind of agreement. Prem's to protect himself and his faction. So they're, and Prayut, Prayut is, he's a bit of a pragmatist. He has to control the crown prince, which is very difficult. So he's trying to balance the prince's faction and Prem's faction. And, so it's still a live issue. So the role of the army chief was the battle of the army chief was key, and that I think is how we know that Prayat Wongsawan has been kind of sidelined. But there's a lot of rumors around this evening and yesterday, which are very interesting. Rumors say that Pram is frightened to stay at his home in Bansi Dev, so he's under the protection of the army. I honestly don't know if these rumors are true. I've been trying to investigate, but there's rumors flying around tonight and yesterday that says Pram is afraid for his life and he's fleeing. And I'll do my best to find out about them, but it's difficult to know the truth of this. But I think the bigger point and the sadder point is that this is how it's going to be for Thais now until succession. We'll have all these rumors going around and people will panic about these different things. It'll be very hard for us to know the truth, but there'll be constant panic, constant rumor. The stock market will be going down often because of rumors, and no one can talk about this openly because of 112. So it's a terrible situation that Thais are facing. You know, we're having to live on rumors and gossip, and anybody with bad intentions can just spread some gossip and cause problems. And people like me and old journalists, people like you too, will try our best to figure out what's true and what's not. But it's very difficult because it's also secretive. So this is going to be Thailand now. It's all going to be rumors and gossip and panic. And, what a shame. It's not a way to run a country in the 21st century.
Even this issue is very important for future of country also.
Exactly.
So, yes. So talk about the Royal Property Bureau. That is the right. So okay. Dr. Jirayu still be a chairman of the Royal Property Bureau, right? They have a both position. One is the Lord of Chamberlain of the Royal Household Bureau. That is one, right? Right now they have two positions, right?
Well, we don't. This is another thing we don't even know.
Okay.
And this is another sad thing about Thailand. We don't know the rules, but many people, including me and I think Ajahn Somsak, Howard, many of us assume that the reason Chirayu was made Grand Chamberlain or Lord Chamberlain was to remove him from the CPB, because we think the prince wants to have his own person running the CPB.
Right.
So we kind of assume that actually he can't do both these jobs at once, and that this position is now vacant, and that Prayut and the prince have done this in order to have full control over the CPB, because Chirayu was like old palace nobility. He was part of the old system. He ran the CPB along, in terms of the wishes of, the old elite. And we assume that the reason he's been moved is to change things. But, the rules govern the palace. They were first drawn up 800 years ago, and they were updated 100 years ago. But, these are ancient rules that nobody really knows what the rules are. And again, this is a modern country being ruled by this ancient institution that, we don't even know the rules. We have no clarity. So it's a mess. But what do we know? We know the Crown Property Bureau is the wealthiest conglomerate in Thailand by far, probably the wealthiest in Southeast Asia. It's got more than 50 billion assets. Thai royalists often say, well, look, these assets are managed for the sake of the country. It's not the royals can't choose what to do with them. It's all done by the government. That's nonsense. It's a lie. The money of the CPB is managed by the monarch, and who the monarch chooses to run the CPB, they can do whatever they want with this money. So when royalists say that it's not really run by the monarchy, it's a lie. So there's all this money that's now open for grabs. The Crown Prince clearly wants it. And I think, to me, this is one of the key points about the whole succession struggle. So, it'll be very interesting to see who's in charge now. There was a Phalang was also in charge of part of the CPB. Mr. Selby, he was also pushed out recently. So what we've been seeing in the past year is Prince's people basically kicking out all the top management of the CPB and putting in their own people.
So someone say right now the the reign of the king Bhumibol has been over in the Thai palace.
Yeah, I mean, I was one of the people that said that. I mean, I think everybody in Thailand has been worried about what's going to happen when the king dies.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the king's still alive, I think, but he's a vegetable. I mean, I don't mean to be rude about it. I know that many Thais have respect for the king. I don't mean rude, but he's a vegetable. His mind is not working. And so, effectively, the Crown Prince and Prayut are the two people running Thailand.
Mm-hmm.
So, effectively, the succession has happened already, and we're now in a very dangerous new era.
Maybe on your forecast, what happened in Thailand or in the Thai palace before December 5th?
I predicted that there was going to be an announcement around the Crown Prince's birthday in July, and I was wrong. So, I have to admit, when I get things wrong, I can't hide it. I was wrong, but I don't want to start making more predictions because I already got a few things wrong. But I don't think the king can ever be shown to people again.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think he can ever stand, he can never talk.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can stick him in a chair and, like they used to do and wheel him around, but he'll never show signs of consciousness again.
Mm-hmm.
So, and from what I gather, there's increasing pressure from the Crown Prince for succession to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And really, succession can kind of be managed because the king's basically brain dead. Mm-hmm. It's a question of when the doctors turn off the machines.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, because the king's life is, his quality of life, he has no quality of life. It would actually be more humane, I think, to allow him to die.
Mm-hmm.
But he's not even being allowed to die. So I think many of us assume, there's going to be a succession announcement soon.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong about July, but I still think we're going to see it sooner rather than later. And I think all the moves that we've seen in the past few days and weeks and months about this Crown Property Bureau, about what's happened to the Wachardai family, all these things are kind of preparing for the announcement. So
mm-hmm.
we're seeing it happen. We're seeing it unfold.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's going to be almost the worst possible scenario for Thailand because it seems that the succession might be contested.
Mm-hmm.
So in the short term, in terms of short-term risk, we may see an attempt by the old guard, by Prem and his allies, to try and do something to sabotage succession.
Mm-hmm.
It seems they haven't given up yet.
Mm-hmm.
So at the time of succession, there could be violence, there could be turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
And secondly, many people thought, many of us used to, including me, we thought, well, maybe, the Crown Prince can't be that bad.
Mm-hmm.
And when he becomes king, because he won't have the same respect that Bhumibol had,
mm-hmm.
there'll be a slow evolution because the monarchy will slowly become less important in Thailand and Thailand will slowly modernize.
Mm-hmm.
Because, for the past 50 or 60 years, Thailand has been a cult. It's been a royal cult that's really damaged the emergence of democracy. And some of us thought that, under Vajiralongkorn, the palace would naturally become less powerful and democratic institutions would naturally expand to fill the gap. And so it would actually be quite positive. Mm-hmm. But I think now that's wrong. Now we're seeing it's Vajiralongkorn and Prayut. And Prayut's making all these plans by fixing the constitution and changing the rules that he wants to be prime minister for 10 years
mm-hmm.
or more.
Mm-hmm.
He's power crazy. So he and the prince want to rule things from now on. And I think most Thais won't accept it. And what's really interesting is that the middle class, who traditionally have been very royalist and very kind of anti-democratic, they hate the Crown Prince and they're not going to accept it.
Right.
So I think the longer term, we're probably going to see some kind of violent overthrow or revolution because we're going to see Prayut and the prince trying to hang on
mm-hmm.
really by fear and by force.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that will work in Thailand. The only reason that dictatorship worked in Thailand in the past is because it had this little bit of magic, this royalist magic that people loved Bhumibol. A lot of people loved Bhumibol, so they were prepared to accept dictatorship. But that prior to the prince, they can't do that. It's going to be fear and force. And I think sooner or later, there's going to be an uprising. So, in the long term, Thailand will be democratic. We know that's inevitable. But unfortunately, I think the way we're going to get there is through violence and upheaval. And people are going to die. And there's going to, we had 1973, 1976, we had 1992, 2010. I'm sorry to say there's going to be another tragic chapter in Thailand before this is over.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any sign from Prince Chulalongkorn? Do he want to change, or he want to solve the problem that you are thinking about the crisis going to be happening in the future?
I think some of the best sources close to him are some of the big businessmen, people like Anutin and others who, but I don't speak to them directly. But I think, and I know that many progressive Thais kind of had this hope that maybe Chulalongkorn would be a positive surprise, that maybe he wants to bring us democracy. And I know that in the red shirts, back in 2013, 2014, a lot of red shirts started to believe this. Now, I don't know the answer, but all I can say is I don't see it, because all I can see is that the prince is more cruel and more horrible than we thought. You saw what he did to Surat, his third wife, and her family, right? He divorced his third wife. Fine, if he's sick of his third wife, he's a prince. If he wants a new wife, fine. But he jailed all his ex-wife's relatives and tormented the whole family, which is a horrible thing to do. Then we saw, late last year, we saw 3 deaths. We saw Moor Yong and 2 more people who died mysteriously in custody after annoying the crown prince. 2 of them supposedly died from suicide, and Moor Yong supposedly died from blood poisoning. Well, nobody in Thailand believes that. They died in army custody. It's clearly not true. So people are being murdered, and people are being tortured and humiliated. His ex-wife is being humiliated. It seems to me like he's out of control, and he's had a strange life. He was brought up to believe he was a god, and I just think it seems he's not capable of democratic, understanding. So, I think this is one of the biggest developments for me in the past year in Thailand, is that if we had any doubt about whether the crown prince might be a progressive force, we can see that he's not. We can see that he's probably scarier than we thought, and it's really worrying. For you and I and many of us, we've challenged the 112 law in what we do. But now, any of us who want to talk about Thailand, we're also taking an additional risk that the crown prince is a very dangerous man, and if we talk about him, we risk annoying him. But I think we have to, or at least for me, I have to say it. I think he's very dangerous. I think we're coming to a very dangerous time.
All right, so let's see. Just waiting and see. That it's the Thai people say all the time. All right. Thank you so much, Andrew. I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It's always good to talk to you, John, and all the best to you.
Yeah, thank you.
ขอบคุณครับ
ครับสวัสดีครับแอนดรูว์ แมคเกอร์เกอร์นะครับเป็นสื่อมวลชนที่อยู่ในประเทศอังกฤษนะฮะแล้วก็ติดตามเรื่องของสถาบันพระมหากษัตริย์ไทยอย่างต่อเนื่องและยาวนานนะครับบทวิเคราะห์ของเขาหลายๆเรื่องนั้นก็เรียกร้องความสนใจหรือได้รับความสนใจจากคนทั่วโลกนะครับแม้ว่าจะมีมุมที่หลายมุมนะฮะที่คนไทยเองอาจจะรับไม่ได้แต่ว่านี่คือสิ่งที่เป็นความจริงที่คนไทยอาจจะต้องรับทราบรับรู้และก็นำไปสู่การวินิจพิจารณากันอีกครั้งหนึ่งนะครับเอาละครับและนี่คือทั้งหมดของรายการเสียงไทยเพื่อเสรีภาพของคนไทยในวันนี้นะครับขอบพระคุณที่ติดตามรับชมกลับมาคุยกันใหม่ครั้งหน้าวันนี้ลาไปก่อนครับสวัสดีครับ